Death is not something to be taken lightly. However, throughout history, some people have died in pretty dumb ways that'll have you thinking. Let's start with number 6, Franz Reichelt. To put it simply, Reichelt was a French tailor and inventor who believed in himself a little too much. At some point in his life, Reichelt made it his mission to design a, wait for it, wearable parachute. He apparently believed that if a pilot ever needed to abandon their aircraft midair, his invention would be just the thing to save the day. Armed with his tailoring expertise and innovative ideas, Reichelt set out to design various prototypes of wings and parachute suits. The designs all looked pretty questionable, but I digress. The real problem was that they never made it past the testing phase. Despite having no success whatsoever, Reichelt did not give up on his idea. He also did not return to the drawing board, because he believed the problem was with the testing process, not his designs. With this mindset, Reichelt began to petition the Paris police prefecture, asking for permission to conduct a test from the Eiffel Tower. When they couldn't ignore his letters anymore, the prefecture finally granted Reichelt permission in 1912. They believed he would show up, put a few of his inventions to the test by using dummies, and call it a day. What they didn't know was that the overzealous inventor had other plans. When Reichelt arrived at the tower on February 4th that year, he announced that he would be trying out the invention himself. The people around tried to convince him that it was too dangerous, but he wasn't having any of that. In the end, Reichelt jumped from the first platform of the tower wearing his invention. And, well, if he was successful, he wouldn't be on this list now, would he? Number 5, Chrysippus. If there's one thing you will learn from the death of Chrysippus, it's that jokes from ancient Greece did not age well. In his lifetime, Chrysippus was a Greek Stoic philosopher recognized for being the third lead of the Stoic school and the second founder of Stoicism. He was very smart and was exceptional at logic, physics, and the theory of knowledge. So, how exactly did a man earn a spot on a list like this? The short answer is his eccentric sense of humor. Several accounts of Chrysippus's life report that one day, at the ripe age of 73, he came across a donkey eating some figs, and it turned out to be the funniest thing he had ever seen. At some point, he said, "Now give the donkey a drink of pure wine to wash down the figs," and subsequently died of laughter. Literally. If you would like to not think about Chrysippus as the man who cracked himself up so much that he died laughing, you'll be glad to know that there's a lesser-known account of how he died. According to this account, Chrysippus drank undiluted wine at a feast and became very dizzy. He passed away shortly after. It doesnp really matter which account you believe, because going by his actions, it's quite clear that Chrysippus was bound to be on this list, one way or the other. Number 4, Kurt Gödel. In his day, Kurt Gödel was a well-respected logician, mathematician, and philosopher. In fact, he was such a big deal that he's often mentioned alongside Aristotle and Gottlob Frege, two of the most significant logicians in history. When Gödel wasn't off doing whatever it is that mathematicians do, he liked to spend time with his wife Adele. He also enjoyed the company of his dear friend Moritz Schlick, a well-known philosopher and physicist. You know what they say about nerds of the same feather? Or was it birds? Anyway, tragedy struck when Schlick was shot to death by a former student. Yep, school shootings have been a thing since the 1930s. Following the death of his friend, Gödel realized just how much he liked living and developed a crippling fear of being poisoned. To prevent this, he came up with what he thought was the perfect plan. He would only eat food prepared by his wife Adele. For a while, this arrangement worked well for Gödel, but things went south when Adele was hospitalized in 1977. In his wife's absence, Gödel was faced with a problem. Adele was the only person he trusted to prepare his meals, so he decided he just wouldn't eat. At this point, we have to assume he was a really bad cook, because the other option is that he didn't trust himself. The thing about not eating is that it leads to malnutrition and starvation, and in Gödel's case, death. At the time of his passing, the logician weighed just 29 kilograms. Number 3, Gary Hoy. Gary Hoy was that one guy in the office with one good joke that he liked to tell just about everyone who cared to listen. Unbeknown to him, this joke would eventually end his life. Hoy was a corporate and securities law specialist, and he was a partner at the Holden Day Wilson law firm. The company was situated in the Toronto Dominion Centre, an office complex of 6 skyscrapers in Toronto's financial district. The Toronto Dominion Centre skyscrapers were a big deal at the time and were said to have windows made of unbreakable glass. So, you see where this is going? As I said earlier, Hoy was a pretty good sport who liked to make jokes. So, as crazy as it sounds, it didn't come as much of a surprise when he formed the habit of slamming himself into the office windows to showcase the strength of the glass. In 2024, this kind of behavior will get you an email from HR and a scheduled visit to the company's shrink. But I guess things were different in the 90s. One day, while giving a tour of the Toronto Dominion Center to a group of prospective law students, Hoy decided to lighten the mood by performing his good old stunt. He slammed into the window the first time and was unharmed. But then he did it again for good measure, and that's when things got deadly. The force of Hoy slamming into it removed the window from its frame and sent him plummeting 24 floors to his death. I guess the lesson here is that after you successfully hurl yourself at a glass window the first time and remain unharmed, you maybe shouldn't do it again. Number 2. Tycho Brahe. Tycho Brahe, often called Tycho for short, was a Danish astronomer of the Renaissance. He was really good at his job and was well respected for his accurate astronomical observations. Tycho's expertise caught the attention of King Frederick II, who was apparently a big fan of astronomy. During his reign, the king granted him an estate on the island of Hven and charged him with constructing and running the first custom-built observatory in modern Europe. Tycho proved to be equal to the task when he successfully established Uraniborg. In addition to being one of the most intelligent minds of his time, Tycho was also well known for being very polite. So polite, in fact, that when he felt the need to ease himself while attending a banquet in Prague in October 1601, he decided against it because he didn't want to appear rude. To paint a not-so-vivid picture, Tycho sat for hours ignoring his bursting bladder simply because he didn't want to breach etiquette. When he finally made it back home, Tycho realized he had become unable to pee. Try as he might, he was only able to get out small amounts and with excruciating pain. 11 days later, on the 24th of October 1601, he passed away. Shortly after his death, a contemporary physician came to the conclusion that Tycho's illness may have been a kidney stone, which makes sense considering his symptoms. But when his body was exhumed around 300 years later, no kidney stones were found. Over the years, modern medical professionals have concluded that Tycho's cause of death could have been anything from a burst bladder to prostate cancer. It is rumored that the astronomer wrote his epitaph, and it read, "He lived life like a sage and died like a fool." Honestly, I couldn't have said it better. Number 1. Carl Wilhelm Scheele. You would think it's common knowledge to anyone who works with dangerous chemicals should avoid ingesting them. But as it turns out, it isn't. Or at least it wasn't in the late 1700s when Swedish-German pharmaceutical chemist Carl Wilhelm Scheele was in practice. As his career progressed, Scheele made a number of groundbreaking contributions to science, ranging from the discovery of oxygen and some organic acids to the identification of elements like barium, chlorine, and hydrogen. Unfortunately, his life was cut short at the age of 43 because of a dangerous practice that was common among scientists in that era. You see, in the 1700s, there were very limited methods of chemical characterization, and so many scientists resorted to smelling and even tasting the chemicals that they worked with. Kind of like what you would do if you worked as a food taster, but like with dangerous substances. While some scientists were lucky enough not to ingest as much toxic chemicals, Scheele worked primarily with heavy metals, and so he was constantly ingesting elements like arsenic, mercury, lead, and their compounds. In the fall of 1985, Scheele fell seriously ill, and then, on the 21st of May 1786, he passed away. According to doctors, his cause of death was, you guessed it, mercury poisoning. And that's it for this video. See you in the next one.